And welcome to Community Kitchen. Another beautiful day out there. And we're going to be talking about bees today, a subject I do love. We've been following them over time. We've looked at the valley bees. We've looked at the honey hunters out Kilcoy Way. And now we're going to the city and we're going to talk to the guys there who are... I think it's fantastic. It's a global movement that's happening, of course. We've been listening and reading about it for some time. But this is a young couple who have taken the city by storm. I talked about that we were going to follow up on the CWA's decision to allow packet cakes into their cooking comps. So we're going to be talking to CWA about that this morning because in all reality it's only a minor section, but I'm sure Jules Skinner, who's going to be representing CWA, will actually fill us in all those little rules, and we can have a discussion about that, which I'm really looking forward to. I think I'm really excited because of the fact it's brought the CWA back into the discussion group again, an organisation that is so wonderful. It's done so many wonderful things throughout its time, and one of the biggest lobbyist groups in Australia, so how about that? So what we might do is, I think we'll go to a song and then we'll come back very shortly with our first guest, B1/3 Honey Hunters. Just a little article I saw this week, once again the paper dragging a few things, and the heading was "Fat Chance Will Stop Eating at Our Desks." And I guess it's very relevant when you're thinking about the amount of people that's spending time now in front of their computers, but eyes glued to the computer screens while mindlessly chewing reheated takeaway over a keyboard. Welcome to the 21st century, apparently. Al desco dining, they call it. And there's a growing trend of eager beaver office workers making themselves fatter, unhappier and less productive by refusing to walk outside to eat. And I think it's one of those things too, isn't it? You just get caught in this... I don't know, this little bit of a cycle. I can remember working in the office myself. You'd sort of feel as if you didn't have a chance to get up from the office, from the desk and go and eat. But when you do, you just feel so much better because you have a bit of a change, you give your eyes a little bit of a stretch, your body's walking around. But I think that a lot of the times the average lunch break is about 45 minutes. And according to a recruitment company, Hayes, 1 in 5 employers take a quarter of that lunch break or less. And one of the nutritionalists, Susie Burrell, was saying that there were serious health implications. The longer people sit in their workplace, the worse it is for their metabolism. Research shows it doesn't matter if people do an hour of exercise a day. If they then sit for most of the rest of the time, all the benefit is undone plus more. To a song and to our first interview. And welcome back to Community Kitchen. I'm very happy to invite our next guests online to talk to me, Kate Scull and Jack Stone. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you? I'm
very well. I was so delighted to read about your article about the B1/3, what do we call them? B1/3 generation...
B1/3 neighbourhood honey.
Neighbourhood honey, and it's wonderful to see someone doing something in the urban skylight, because you look up and you don't really think about those little bees in those areas.
No, well, I mean, we certainly didn't consider them half as much as we do now. When we were looking at sort of what we wanted to do within Brisbane, they very much go about their job and they do their thing, and we'd be very lost without them. They're very important little creatures.
Well, we've seen a trend on our Community Kitchen. We're always looking at food, and we've seen a trend towards the vertical gardens. We've seen a lot of chefs now who are growing their own herbs and trying to cut down some of the expenses and packaging and whatever in their kitchens. And to think now that we can actually look at the fact that you've got beehives on top of some of the cityscape is just fantastic.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think there's a real emerging reconnection with food happening, across, everyone's lives, not just in hospitality. Jack and I work in hospitality, so we have a very close and personal connection with what people are eating. We're very lucky to work with amazing chefs, and what seems to come up time and time again is that food that is grown locally, food that is grown holistically, and animals that are reared the way they ought to be, not in factory settings, but animals that are reared natural surroundings. All that food tastes better. Food that hasn't travelled a long way tastes better. It's fresher. And, of course, honey from the rooftop of the restaurant below tastes amazing. So, we've been very lucky with how people have embraced it.
It's interesting, isn't it? I've noticed that the little honey bees, the little wild bees, which is such a beautiful little thing, once upon a time you'd see them everywhere, and then we had worries for a while that we were going to have such a cut in the population of bees. Now we're starting to see people like yourselves. There's a whole group of people emerging there that realise just the importance of the bee. For such a little tiny thing, it plays such an important part in our production of food.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, the name of our project is Bee One Third, and that's because a third of the global food supply is pollinated by honeybees. So plants, and 80%, 87% of leading foods, the most popular foods that we eat are dependent. It's completely vital that they're pollinated by a honeybee. And in Australia, that figure is a whopping 65%. So it is very much a trending subject at the moment because it's so important. And of course, city bees and rural bees both face very, very different struggles at the moment. In the city, it's obviously urban sprawl and loss of forageable flora and habitat destruction. Whereas in the rural areas, bees are struggling with pesticides and monoculture practices that are really impacting very negatively on them. And because they are so vital to so many fruits and vegetables and seeds and nuts, it's an important issue that's finally getting the attention that it really deserves, I think.
I was listening on the radio this morning, coming into the studio, and they were saying that in Europe they've just had a win in cancelling another particular spray because it affects the brain of the bee. Yeah. And when you start to think of this little tiny thing and the effect it can have, it's wonderful to see that we're changing our ways. But let's go to how it all started. I mean, surely you must have been scared when you first realised that you had to deal with bees. Everyone thinks of bees, they think of hurt and pain, and I think that would be one thing that I would have a hesitation. So how did you learn to handle your bees?
Well, it was a lot of reading, and Jack, my business partner, is very hands-on with the bees. We're both involved in the maintenance of the hives, but he has really taken it on board. He's quite the beekeeper, but we're very new to the whole beekeeping world. We're relative rookies, and we've been to the Ipswich Beekeeping Club, and that's a huge collection of knowledge. Beekeepers are really open and generous with their information and their experiences, and because every single hive is its own little microcosm, its own little individual characteristics and personality, it means that everyone has different experiences. So along with our reading, we've been very lucky to have people mentoring us along the way. And we didn't really have any fear. We weren't ever scared of dealing with bees, although we were very happy. We only recently got suits in the last couple of months, so that was pretty welcome addition to our business sort of.
I can imagine.
But a lot of it was just getting in there. Jack put himself on the swarm list, and we got a call one afternoon from a house in Mount Gravatt saying we've got bees outside our letterbox and we don't know what to do with them. So Jack had all the gear ready to go in his car. He had a box and a sheet, and we shook the bees into this box and upturned it on this sheet, and beekeeping, started from there, with driving home with the bees in a box in the back of the car, and ever since then it's very much an experiential hobby. You have to be in there experiencing it and learning as you go.
It's amazing, isn't it, when you taste the different types of honey. And I think that where we live, we have a lot of ironbark trees, and we've got a gentleman who's got some hives on our farm, which I'm so happy for, that he was, really, even though we've got quite a bit of land, it's just fantastic to be able to have hives, even though the cows have a bit of fun pushing them around sometimes. But you notice that there's lucerne honey, because the beekeepers will put them on the beautiful lucerne fields. What do you find in the city? What happens with the taste there?
Well, at the moment we've got about 6 different honeys And as with if you're tasting, say, Shiraz, if you've got 5 different bottles of Shiraz and you're trying them against each other, you really get to taste that uniqueness. So we've got 2 different batches from our East Brisbane and our Fairfield hives. So seasonally they differ as well, depending on the plants that are available at that time, and nectar flow and that sort of thing. So our Fairfield honey is quite citrusy. Our East Brisbane honey is a very round, intense caramel flavour. Our Light Space, we have some beautiful Light Space honey, and that tastes like light cheese and lime. So yeah, there's a lot of difference. And I mean, even if you have 2 hives next to each other, they can taste wildly different as well. The colonies go out and in the city, I mean, it's very difficult to know exactly where they forage because they fly up to 5 kilometres. It's hard to pinpoint exactly where they've been in the city because in Brisbane we have a really, really green, diverse selection of flowers and plants and trees. So who knows what they're foraging exactly, but it tastes amazing and they're all very different.
It's nice to know now that the beekeepers can keep their bees in the state forest too, because that was such a little bit tender hooks for a while there, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with that issue, but I can imagine they would only have, I mean, their contribution to biodiversity is huge, so having them in the state forest would just be wonderful for the brightness and the vibrancy of the forest.
Now, you were saying that you have different restaurants. I do know of a restaurant just by pure chance that I've eaten at in New Farm and Gerard's, and they have bees on the top there. So they're actually using your product too?
They are. We've had that hive up there since November last year, and we did the first extraction probably 2 months ago now, and they were using some of our other honey before then, but now they've got the Gerard's James Street honey on the menu, and they've got it in several different dishes, and yeah, they love it. You know, chefs know good produce, and I think they really love the short distance that it travels. You know, low food miles are a huge thing, and having a product so fresh is great for them, and it's great for us as well.
How do you find the weather affects your beehives? Like, we've had so much rain of late. Do you find that has a bad effect or a good effect on them?
Yeah, you know what, that big patch of rain we had early on in the year was actually quite detrimental. We had about, I don't know what it was like up at the sunny coast, but down here we had almost 2 weeks of just solid rain. And we don't like opening the hives when it's raining for obvious reasons. So unfortunately during that time we couldn't really get in the hives, and we usually go in every fortnight, every sort of 10 to 14 days to stay on top of pests and maintenance and, you know, just keep a really close eye on how they're progressing. And during that time, one of our colonies got quite large and actually swarmed. And we weren't able to manage it because we couldn't get in there. So there's some of our bees somewhere around the city. They've set up home somewhere else. And the other, unfortunately, rain brings out the black hive beetle, which is a really big issue for beekeepers, especially in Queensland. And so we lost one of our hives to beetle as well during that time, which was quite sad.
We're actually quite fortunate. When you look at the world in total, there's a lot of different things that can affect bees. We have been fortunate, even though we have a few problems. We're not as bad with the Varroa mite and a few things like that affect so many countries.
You're absolutely right. I mean, New Zealand's lost around 47% of its beekeepers when the Varroa mite hit, largely amateur and hobbyist beekeepers, because the medication and the antibiotics to treat the bees is so expensive. Really only the commercial beekeepers can afford to keep it up. So we are the only country in the world that doesn't have Varroa mite presently, which is another reason why it's really important to bolster and boost the bee population everywhere as much as possible, because it is going to hit, and it's going to be a numbers game when it hits, and we're going to lose a lot of our hives, both managed and wild. So that's a big part of what Bee One Third do as well, is making sure that our populations throughout the city are as healthy as possible, so that when this plague hits, we're as prepared as we can be.
I think it's fantastic. One little thing I saw that Jack said, he's put on one of the Googles, I had a look, bees rule and bees are great. And I think that's a wonderful thing to remember.
But yeah, they certainly are. They do so much for us, and they're very captivating little creatures. And the more, you know, we learn about them and more we interact with them, the more that view is solidified for us. We absolutely love bees. And we want everyone else to love bees as well, because you shouldn't be scared of them. They do an amazing service for us. $4.9 billion bees are worth to the agricultural industry in terms of pollination. So embrace the bee, we say.
So just say, for example, that someone does find that they've got some bees. What do they do? Do they ring? How do they ring you? How do they contact you?
Well, we have contact details on our website, which is b13rd.com.au, and we're also on Facebook. We're very active on the social media side. So you can go onto the DTI website and look up the swarm collection list, and Jack's number is there, or you can go via our website. And basically, we just try where possible to relocate and rehome those bees rather than lose. Often they're destroyed, swarms are destroyed, and we obviously want to avoid that where possible. So if you get in contact with us, we've extracted bees from kitchen walls and playhouses and a variety of places. It's amazing where the little girls set up.
That's lovely. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us, and best of success with your urban farming.
Thank you very much for having me and us, and you'll have to come and visit the hive next time you have dinner at Gerard's. We'll get you up on the roof.
Thank you very much. Goodbye for now.
Thanks, Annette. Bye-bye.
And we've been talking to Kat Scull from B13rd, and it's great to see, isn't it? I mean, we've got our wonderful beekeepers around our region here, and we've spoken to them. We've got some fantastic people doing some wonderful things, but when you start to hear the stats of just exactly the importance of bees in our agricultural sector, very important. So if you do have a hive, I mean, I'm sure that you wouldn't be getting a Brisbane collector from here, but just Google if you need to find a beekeeper from here. We have the honey hunters at Kilcoy, we have the organisation in Caboolture. We've got so many different people around that can help you out. I'm sure it's a worthwhile thing. I think we'll go to our sponsors. And you're back with Community Kitchen. We have our next guest online, Jill Skinner from the CWA. Good morning.
Good morning, Annette. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I had to have you on here because in the last couple of weeks, of course, everyone's talking about, oh no, the CWA is allowing packet cakes into their cooking comps. But it's not as blanket as that, is it?
No, it's only one section, one cake out of about 20. And, you know, we have many sections. There's fruit cakes, there's all the different types of cakes for from 17 to 25-year-olds, over 70s, etc., etc. And this is just one trial thing to see how it goes.
Don't you love it when the media, you know, I mean, we're part of it, but everyone gets caught up in it. And, you know, the one thing, the positive thing about this is the fact that people are talking about the CWA.
Yes, it is. And I hope that they come and join some of our branches. It would be wonderful.
I think it's, and it's something that we discussed when I was talking to you yesterday about coming on and talking. I think the lovely thing is that the fact that it has got people chatting, but at the same time it brings to the front the fact that cooking has changed.
Yes, it has. I must say, over many, many different ways. I must say, so many people are sort of not doing takeaway, and they're doing takeaway sort of type of things, rather than actually mixing up something and putting it in an oven or in a microwave or whatever, you know. And a cake mix is a very, very good thing to have in your house because you can do so many things with it in a hurry.
And I think also a lot of the times, and one thing, I mean, some of the younger ones, the conversations that I've been having with a lot of younger people, whilst I have a pantry that could probably feed 100 people, you know, it's just one of those things that I don't know what happens, but as a mother and something, you know, you've always had to put something together. And we didn't have convenience shopping, so I wasn't trained in that era where you had convenience stores, so you had to think about what you wanted to eat, because the supermarkets closed at lunchtime and they never opened again till Monday morning.
No.
So life changed, but nowadays you find that people don't have all the different ingredients. Like if I'm baking, I look in the fridge and I think, oh, I've got some apples I might need to use, a few bananas here, I've got this and that, and I want to do something. Then you can actually sit about and you can work out what you want to cook. But knowing that we have those ingredients, but a lot of people don't have that in their pantry anymore.
No, they don't. And two, remember, so many things now have a life expectancy on them, whereas we did not have that, and we still probably don't abide by that in many ways, which doesn't make our food any more dangerous, but it's just one of those things, like our spices and bits and pieces that we have. And too, there are a lot of people living alone where to have all that in their cupboard is not always convenient.
I think that's a very good point. And I mean, and that's the one thing, I mean, we're thinking of alone at the Farm Fantastic, of course, the CWA come and cook with us on Cooking for One, because when you're cooking for one, you can become lazy.
Oh, yes, very easy. As a person who lives alone, and sometimes, yes, but I beat that by cooking up gear, lots of different things, and then freezing them up so that I have a convenient meal for me.
Yes.
To eat, you know, and not only that, I know exactly what's in it.
Yes, I think that's a very good point.
You know, and with the cake mix, I've got a little note here. When I'm catering, sometimes I'll make a syrup pudding, which I just mix up a cake mix, put the syrup in the bottom of a bowl, and then pour the cake mix over the top, put it in the microwave, and you've got that wonderful old-fashioned syrup pudding, and everybody enjoys it. And it takes me 5 minutes.
So you're still actually accountable for what you're putting on the table. So it's not, even though you might think, well, okay, the cake mix, it can't have that bad of ingredients in it. I think it's just the sugar and fat and salt levels that we have to watch, isn't it?
Well, that's it. But with every bit of food that we buy in, like our bread and everything like that, if you spent so much time looking at some of that, whereas if you cut the salt out, instead of when you get a meal you sprinkle it with salt, you taste it first and eat it as the flavour comes to you, rather than add salt before you even try it.
Now, Jill, just thinking of the CWA, when I got in here this morning, we're talking about this, I said, we've got the CWA coming on. A lot of people, the younger generation, don't actually understand what the CWA does. Tell us about this for our listeners.
Well, all right, I'll speak about my branch. We support Love and Care, which is a group that gets bundles to children going into foster care. We get gear together for DV Connect. We have also supported survivors of suicide. We do many things like that, but we also can have fun. Like I think it's next month, we are having a fish and chip day rather than a fundraising day. And we'll go out and find a place and have fish and chips and just enjoy each other's company. And after a meeting, we always have our meal and we talk and everything like that. And it's companionship. It gives you many things, because we have competitions that you can enter. Let me say, when I spoke somewhere recently about being in CWA, and I said, when I turned 60 was the first time I pranced across the stage dressed as Red Riding Hood with a gun in a garter. I would never have done that anything when I was younger.
Yes.
And there are many facets to us. Public speaking, cookery, handicrafts, and knitting and crochet, all those different things we do.
I think it's a wonderful thing. I mean, coming from the country myself, I just noticed that the CWA played a really big part in my mother's life and her friends' lives, because a lot of the times they were just on their farms.
Yes.
They didn't have the coffee shop to rip into and have a cup of coffee with their friends. I mean, they wouldn't have even had anything like that. But the CWA gave them a place that they went, they compared, and they worked out. I'll never forget, and even my husband talks about this because we both come from the same areas. We both remember the time that good old apricot chicken hit the table. Now that was sort of like a gourmet. I mean, we never had anything like that my parents, my mother would have had a can of, I didn't know how to make it, but a can of apricots and some sort of packet mix. But someone back there, and we're talking back in the 50s, 60s, where some innovative person must have had little time, and one night just thought, I'm just going to pour this apricot in there, and I'm going to put this in with it and throw some chicken in there and throw it in the oven because I don't have enough time to cook.
Yes.
and created that fast meal. And it was interesting to hear my husband talk about it. And he also had that at his family, and it was one of those little things, all these little tricks and all these little ideas were shared with the women.
Well, the thing is, we started, and we were the centre for the nurses for the babies to come and weighed and checked on and everything like that. Many of our halls were childcare centres in their own facets, because the women came in, the nurse came once a month or whatever, but as you say, it was also there to give people companionship. I was up in Wandai, and I went to one of their birthdays, and they said about one of the original women who were there, and she used to have a horse and a buggy, and she'd pick up 2 or 3 women and their children and bring them to a meeting. Those women would be highly isolated. I remember living on a farm in the 40s, and you had nowhere.
Yes.
You were homeschooled. Your companions were your uncles and aunties, and if they had children, their children. Other than that, you hardly saw anyone. And the women weren't much better,
It's interesting, isn't it? So now we think about our cooking comps. I mean,
yes.
Go back to that, and that's what it all started about. I'm so pleased because, some of the people that I've had on my show here who have been winning cake cooks for years, like one lady I had from the Brisbane exhibition, 21 awards she took out, and these are people. We talk about our master chefs. These are our master cooks. They are just absolutely brilliant that they can produce scones that are just beautiful every time.
Can I say something? When I was chairman of the state cookery, someone wrote and said, could we have scones as a competition? And I said, my dear, remember that all our cakes have to be 3 days old, because cakes come from Cape York to Brisbane, and that's, we make it fair. And I said, if you had a 3-day-old scone, dear, you could play cricket with it. But yes, there is an art to making a lovely scone. Some people make absolutely beautiful scones, and, but it's like anything. Even a cake mix can fail.
Yes. I'm sure it can.
But those ladies, and I have been one of them who've entered in competitions. Their husbands love it because they get 2 or 3 cakes.
The sampling, yes. Actually, you've got a comp going on at the moment, don't you?
Yes.
Is it closed yet?
No. Query at a branch near you.
Yes.
And you can enter. And our division finals day is in June, and I didn't have the exact date, but it's in June, and it's at Ruth Fairfax House. So if you'd like to come and see some of our cakes, come along. I will get it out there to you.
Well, actually, I noticed it was in the Queensland Country Live, the details of that. So if people are interested, because there's quite a lot of categories in there for cooking.
Oh yes, there is. There's quite a few, and really, you get the best of them all coming in, and everybody has a go. And it's wonderful. It really is. And we sell them off, half a cake at a time,
Oh, okay. So that's great, isn't it, in the city?
Yes.
Office workers could go to that. Now, that's a very, very good thought.
Yes.
For morning teas and things like that. Well, thank you, Jill. I'm so happy that we've been able to put out to our listeners that guys, it's only one category of cake. It's not the whole of the CWA cooking comp.
And not only that, one other section is you can buy a nice big cupcake and you can ice it. Now, it's only one section.
Yes.
The rest is make it yourself.
I think that's wonderful. We can put CWA back on the top of the list again, Jill.
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much for joining us. Bye now.
Bye.
There you go, guys. Jill Skinner from CWA, and she was the state chairman of the cooking comp there, and I think it's wonderful. I really had to follow that up because CWA has been something that's been in a lot of families and in a lot of kitchens for many years, and I must say, when someone told me that you were allowed to use packet cakes for every category, I was devastated, but it's not happening. It's one little category, so that's nice to know. we're going to a song. And you're back with Community Kitchen. Last week we talked about Admona SPC, and we were talking about one of the growers there, and how he was dozing all the trees and replanting, and because of our imports, and we're not using as much local produce and local fruit, and it goes on and on, doesn't it? We don't learn, it seems. I try not to be political on this show, but sometimes you just get so frustrated that we seem to run around in these circles. So this morning, listening to the radio coming here, I heard that the federal government's now looking at the fact that they're going to be allocating some funds, loans to farmers because of the transitional period the transitional period for one person to knock out all the apples and then maybe plant something else. They're going to have time. They're going to be allowed to take 20 years to be able to pay back their loans. I think they're going to have loans of up to $650,000. Brings me back to the point, Bart. Why on earth are we dosing our fruit and importing other? Just food for thought, guys. I mean, this seems to me, it's just crazy, isn't it, that we shut the gate after the horse has bolted. It always seems to be the way, and I just wonder sometimes, is the logic there? Maybe these people need to eat more apples so they can get the old brain power going. I don't know. I just think that sometimes it is so frustrating for us mere simple people sitting out in the community listening to these so-called absolute geniuses who are making these vital decisions on our farming rules that are going to take on to our generations and my grandsons and my granddaughters and their families. And it just seems so illogical sometimes. Let's knock down that tree and let's allow the imports to come in. And I know we have trade agreements. I understand all this sort of stuff. But surely at the end of the day, we have to look after our farmers. We really do. And we've been talking to Kat Scull and Jack Stone this morning, B1/3, about their bees in the city. Farming is one of our most vital things. It really is so important for our land, for our future, for our health, for everything. We have to start getting up and shaking our hands a little bit and having a little bit of an opinion, something that maybe I'm not used to. But I really feel so passionate about these things. And I don't know whether I'm missing the point, but there just seems to be something illogical happening. But going to logic now, it is true, guys. The CWA is not allowing packet cakes into every facet of their competition. It's just one little category. And as Jules said this morning, and there is one category for people who don't even want to cook out of a packet. Buy yourself a muffin and decorate it. I think the great thing is you can go to the CWA Centre, which is in the city, to this competition. Have a look at the cakes, guys. If you're in the city and you work in the city, why wouldn't you? You can buy a half of that cake. They sell them off of halves of cakes. Wouldn't you be the most popular person in the lunchroom when you come back with a beautiful CWA cake? And maybe one of the winning ones. Just a thought. I think it's worthwhile having a look at these things. And if you've got nothing to do and if you're feeling a bit lonely and you want to do some good stuff and you want to meet some nice people, look up the CWA. I think it's fantastic. I think it's a wonderful organisation to do some beautiful things, and I'm sure that they're going to need some extra people joining. We don't want it to die. We don't want these things that have been part of our culture to disappear. Well, that's me for today. Also remember, if you've got bees and they're giving you a hard time, get online, have a look, find your local guy. He'll come and take the bees and he'll put them into an area that will then produce honey and will pollinate, and the story goes on. And if you've got some interesting information that you'd like me to put out there, or you do something fantastic, like you might be a beekeeper, or you might be a peach grower, or a cherry grower, or a garlic grower, or whatever you are, we're really interested to share this with our listeners, so you can always give us a buzz on 54951015. Or you can send me an email at annette@twoldducks.com. Until next week, thanks for listening.